Well, welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to be in Chapter 11, which deals with another method of collecting data, and that's observation. Observation is extensively used as well as surveys and questionnaires. They have their benefits and strengths as well as their weaknesses. So let's go ahead and take a look at how data can be collected through observation. Well, welcome back, everybody, and today we are in Chapter 11, and we're going to be looking at observation methods today. Observation methods, as I said in the intro, is a popular way of collecting data because it allows you to see things as they occur. And with that technique, you don't have to worry about what other people said about anything. You don't have to worry about getting historical information that may or may not be accurate. With observation methods, you get to observe everything as it occurs. Now, the definition, as I said, it's the actual recording of behaviors as they happen, and you can look at people, patterns, objects, events, whatever. You're not limited, and the next slide will give you some ideas of the things that you can observe, but really, you can observe whatever you want. If you can see it, you can research it. And they give you some examples, as I said, behaviors, actions, objects, records, pictures. Just about anything can be observed. And as you observe it, you record it, and that way you have an accurate description and an accurate account of what you're observing. And really, there's no limit to it as far as the objects that you can observe when you're doing this type of research. The things that you can observe are the whys. You can observe what happens, but the whats don't explain the whys. Once you have the observation, you can sit down and speculate as to why this happened, or you can use other methods such as interviews, surveys, and questionnaires to ask why did you behave this way. But for the most part, observations only describe what's happened, so it's descriptive research. And over long periods of time, it can be very expensive or even impossible. If you wanted to evaluate the graduating seniors at Mid-America, you'll only be able to look at the seniors that are graduating this semester, for instance, because they won't be around next semester. So it can be expensive or even impossible to do long-range observations. Now, here are some terms that are fairly straightforward. Visible observation. This is an observation in which the observer's presence is known to the subject. For instance, the best example I can give you is when I had surgery in recovery, people would come in and make sure I was okay. They would evaluate me, which is, I guess, study. And from there, they were able to look and see my progress. Hidden observation. This is where the subject is unaware that the observation is taking place. In Hawthorne, Pennsylvania, for instance, the Hawthorne studies, as I had mentioned earlier, the workers didn't know that they were being observed, so that would be a hidden observation. And then the advantages of observation over surveying is that data are free from distortions, inaccuracies, and the biases that usually occur, and data are recorded when actual and nonverbal behavior takes place. So you have a broader scope, and you also have the freedom of being able to get more accurate data. Now, when it comes to observing human behavior, you have complementary evidence. And this is observation provides an additional source of information that helps explain other research findings. For instance, B.F. Skinner, when he was doing some of his behavioral research, he was observing animals in the way that they behaved. And he used Pavlov also. So Pavlov had the dogs that salivated when they were given meat. So you have complementary evidence, and both studies complemented each other. Response latency, and that's the amount of time it takes to make a choice between two alternatives, such as a measure of the strength of preference. You have direct observation, which is a straightforward attempt to observe and record what naturally occurs. If you are studying the migration of geese in the south, and if you're looking at them, that's a straightforward direct observation. Contrived observation occurs when the investigator creates an artificial environment in order to test a hypothesis. So Bandura did that with children, and he had a clown and some toys, and he watched how children interacted with that clown in that toy room. So he created an artificial environment and studied how children behaved under certain circumstances. And the environment may increase the frequency of certain behavior patterns to be observed. And that was the case with Bandura. The children's behavior intensified after certain stimuli were introduced into that study, and they noticed patterns of behavior changing. Now you have with the pros, you do have the cons. You have observer bias, and that's a distortion of measurement resulting from the cognitive or thinking behavior of actions of a witnessing observer, and that means recording events subjectively, recording events inaccurately, interpreting observation data incorrectly. So you can distort it just like you can with a survey or a questionnaire. So you have to be mindful of that and know that these things can occur and try to remove any subjectivity from it. Now, some of the ethical issues when you're observing humans, their right to privacy, you have to maintain that as much as possible. Contrived observation as entrapment, that means enticing them into that study and them not knowing what it is, or trapping them essentially, misleading them and so forth. So that would be some issues. Researchers feel comfortable collecting data if the observed behavior is commonly performed in public. The behavior is performed in a setting that assures the anonymity of the person, and the observed person has agreed to be observed. So those are some areas that make it more comfortable and conducive to observation type methods. Now, some other observations. You have physical trace evidence, which you can see something that is present, but you can see that something in the past might have occurred. For example, where on a library book, you know that people have been using a book in the past, and it's probably a popular book compared to the amount of wear. Packages in trash. Investigators can go in the trash can and take a look at what kind of stuff the victim or perpetrator might collect and throw away. Content analysis, that's the observation and quantitative description of the manifest content of communications. So here you're looking at the content of what's being said or what's being observed. Mechanical observation, here you're using technology to observe behaviors, and you see here television monitoring, and these are computerized methods used to obtain television ratings. I guess Nielsen would be an example of that, how they can evaluate who's watching what and how many. You also have website traffic monitoring, how many hits and page views a person gets. This is how many people go to your website or how many people visit or whatever. It doesn't mean that they're going to do anything or buy anything, but at least it gives you an indication of how many people are visiting that website. Click-through rate, and that's a proportion of people exposed to an internet ad who click on its hyperlink to enter the website, and click-through rates are generally very low. Usually people don't want to take the time, or they won't take the time unless they are very attracted to that ad to go and pursue it much further. And so you need to, from a marketing standpoint, be able to attract that customer. And this is what they do with this research. They develop schemes in order to attract the customer to go ahead and hit those hyperlinks to further go down what they call the funnel. Scanner-based research. It's a type of consumer panel in which participants' purchasing habits are recorded with a scanner rather than a purchase diary. And I guess the best example of that is when you go to Walmart or the grocery store and they scan your items. That's where they start recording data, and they can data mine that to find out how much you purchase, when you purchase it, in what quantities. Also, you can with Walmart and many organizations now, because of Walmart's just-in-time inventory practice, they know that after 100 scans of sugar in a day, that it's time to load up the truck at the warehouse with sugar and replenish the stock before it is completely out. So that's another way that you can do research and make sure you have the products on the shelf when you need them. There's also physiological ways of measuring people in observation. You have eye tracking monitor. It records how the subject actually reads or views an advertisement, and it measures unconscious eye movements. I've never seen it, but apparently there's the technology out there today that can do that. Pupillometer, I guess that's the way you pronounce it, observes and records changes in the diameter of the subject's pupils. The only time I've ever done that is have that doctor shine that light in my eye, and he can observe it by the changes as he sees it when he shines that light. Other ways, psychogalvanometer, and that measures the galvanic skin response, which really is the lie detector test. And if you see here the picture, the gentleman that's all wired up, people have used that in the past. I've been given 2 of them in places where I was wanting to work. The company, it's their policy to do that. So they administered a lie detector test on 2 separate occasions for 2 different companies. And it assumes that physiological changes accompany emotional reactions. So I worked both companies, so I guess I passed it. There's been a lot of scrutiny today with that, questioning its reliability and validity. Does it measure what it's supposed to measure? And some people are just naturally nervous when they are, hooked up to that thing, because they do wire you up pretty good. But it's supposed to be able to measure the emotional changes, and one emotion, or if you are emotional, it has a way of measuring whether or not those emotions or those electrical charges that you emit will indicate whether you're telling the truth or lying. Voice pitch analysis. It measures the emotional reactions through physiological changes in a person's voice. Imagine when you get excited, your pitch may go up, you may talk faster, so there's ways of being able to measure that. Today we saw the value of observation and how it can really help researchers get into the real-time study of behavior and processes and people in general. We also looked at how technology is being used today through our skin, through our eyes, through other areas as well, where we're taking a look at how people respond and react to questions. So the world of observation and research is growing, and it's going to be interesting to hear how it's going to evolve as we start to really innovate the way that we study people, processes, and organizations. Well, that's all we have for today, and tomorrow we'll pick up with Chapter 12. Have a good day.